a good amount of car news for you guys. But as always, or not as always, it doesn't always happen. We're going to start with a little video today that talks about a vehicle that we're going to be speaking about a little bit in depth, but I'm hoping that you guys with the start of this video can sort of be reminded as to the amazing vehicle that we're about to show off. So we'll let some people funnel in here. Oh, I can hear myself. At the very least, we sound incredible, which is great. Okay, I had to get rid of that. Amazing. All right, we'll let some folks funnel in here as we wake up on this glorious Tuesday. Hope everyone is doing incredibly well. For those of you that are new to the stream, first time watching, this is the MoneyShift Automotive News channel. We go live every morning at around 8:30 Eastern Time, right around that 8:30 to 9 slot, and we cover all the day's automotive news. So whatever happened, whatever is released, whether it is car or motorcycle, we're talking about it, and we're having an awesome community. Usually the stream lasts anywhere from 30 minutes to an hour and 30 minutes. Honestly, it just depends on when the conversation ends and when the automotive news stops. So that can vary. Like, for example, next week, the week of the 12th, we have Pebble Beach, which will definitely have a lot of cars coming out. And then the following week, the week of the 19th, we have the New York Auto Show. So there's definitely going to be a lot of longer episodes coming in the future. But with that said, today, the first vehicle that we're going to be talking about is the Brabham BT6 3. And I know what you guys are saying. You're like, T, I'm looking at the Brabham BT6 2. Why are you showing me this? And the reason why I'm showing you this is because the cars are effectively the same, but I want you guys to get a reminder of the vehicle you are watching and are about to see, because I'm going to be honest with you guys, hearing this thing is paramount to understanding this car's brilliance, because it truly is an absolutely amazing machine that if you guys just hear, you'll be reminded as to how amazing this car is. Shout out to John Motz with the like. Thank you, my man. I appreciate that. Hope you're doing well. Hope you are doing really well. All right, let's get into this video. This is so clearly at Goodwood. And then we will talk about this car coming up. Okay, I got to remind you guys, because I didn't do this early on. The Brabham BT62, okay, is a vehicle produced by a company out of Adelaide, South Australia. It is a naturally aspirated 5.4-liter V8. It is usually a track-only car, but there is the ability to get a road-legal conversion for folks in the United Kingdom. Who knows if we'll see one of these in the States? I'm sure we will. Let's be honest, with money, anything is possible. This thing uses a Ford V8 5.4-liter engine, but that V8 has been extensively modified in this car. It makes 691 horsepower at 7,400 RPM and 6,200 pound-feet of torque. Let's listen. Yeah, folks, that's a Ford engine. Sounds insane. Sounds insane. Oh, yeah, that's the ticket right there. Yeah, that sounds incredible. Incredible. All right. Now that you guys have the sound out of the way and you know exactly what car I'm talking about, let's actually get to the details of this machine. So what you guys are looking at on the screen right now is the Brabham BT6 3. This is effectively the BT6 2, but the one that will race in the GT2 series. Now, for those of you that aren't familiar, the GT2 series is one that has recently been established. We're talking about its first season of racing is 2021. And in that series, there's an Audi R8. There's a crazy KTM that's powered by an Audi engine. Shout out to Michael. Welcome, my man. Tuning in right at the jump. I appreciate you. Hope you're doing well. So there is an Audi R8. There's a KTM that leverages a nutso inline 5 Series engine. There's a Lamborghini Huracan. There's a Porsche 911 GT2. And now this thing. So it's a pretty expansive series. Shout out to Mark with the like. Welcome, Mark. Hope work is going awesome today. So this is going to be a pretty killer series, right? We're talking about 5 manufacturers now. Mark with the share as well. Thank you for that, dude. Appreciate you a ton. So this series is going to be pretty hot, right? There's going to be a lot of companies competing in it and a lot of fast cars. Now, the BT63 had to make some changes from the BT62 we just saw in order to not only be competitive, but to actually restrict it a little bit because it was too fast in its track-only form. So what are the changes from the video, the car we saw in the video, this guy right here, to this guy right here? Shout out to Patricia with the like as well. Welcome, welcome. Now, the biggest changes to this car are aerodynamic focus. There is a massive diffuser in the rear and a big fin down the spine of the car. Again, we're comparing it to this guy right here. So you can see the diffuser in this model and the fact that it has no fin down the back. And the changes to this one, you can see a fin down the back here, starting at the hood snorkel, going all the way to the rear. Good morning, everyone. Indeed, it is truly incredible. I agree. And again, for those of you that just joined, I am in love with this car as well, Mark. Thank you for the 75 stars, my man. Appreciate you a ton. And just because of that, we're going to take a listen to this thing again because it's worth it. Again, this is a Ford modular V8 in this car. So safe to say it sounds incredible, but the interesting thing to note is that they actually had to detune the car for the GT2 series. So the race car has 600 horsepower. The road car, i.e. the one that you can buy outside of this race series, has 700 horsepower. So they actually had to detune that engine down 100 for this race series, but it doesn't end there. The street car weighs 2,400 pounds. The race car weighs 2,700. So not only did they have to detune the engine, but they also had to increase the weight in order to meet overall power to weight requirements of this series. So this car might have an aerodynamic advantage over the BT62 for which it is based, but it will largely be slower, which is really interesting. That said, this series is going to be freaking dynamite. We have naturally aspirated V8s from this guy and the Audi. We have turbocharged inline 5-cylinder engines from KTM, and then we have crazy turbocharged boxer engines from, flat 6 engines from Porsche. So there's going to be a wide breadth of different noises you're going to be hearing in this series. Now, this car specifically debuts in the final round of the 2021 championship, which takes place in France at the Paul Ricard. Now, this is an interesting track for Brabham as a company because it's the last place where the Formula One arm of Brabham, which, by the way, are kind of connected, not really connected, kind of connected, you know what I mean, got their last win. That is where the Formula One team got their last win, and that is where this car will be making its debut. Is it coincidental? Probably, but we'll see. We got Brandon in the chat. Good morning to you, sir. What the frick is that? This is the Brabham BT63. This is a company out of Australia that makes the BT62, which is this guy right here. 5.4 liter. You can see a good shot of it right there. 5.4 liter Ford V8. That sounds incredible. Now they've created a vehicle for GT2 racing in the BT63, which is what you guys are seeing right here. So this car, if you guys wanted to race, you're like, you know what, Mark Van Booski, Will Baranowski, Brandon, you guys want to get out there, you want to get out on track, you're like, the Brabham BT63, that's the car for me. Okay, how much is it going to cost me to get on track in one of these cars? Now, it's not cheap, okay? $475,000 gets you a Brabham BT63. Now, in the world of race cars, okay, Mark came in with the guess a little short, Mark. A little short. About $200,000 off. Sorry about that. But yeah, $475,000 gets you behind the wheel of a Brabham BT63. Now, put that in perspective, guys, earlier this week, we talked about the Bowler, which was a racing version of the Land Rover Defender that was very mild. By comparison, and that car cost $175,000. So 300 grand less gets you a racing Land Rover Defender, but I can tell you it's not going to sound as good as the Brabham. Shout out to Patricia with the 50 stars. Thank you for that. Appreciate it. Brandon says, is it street legal? This one is not. The Brabham BT63, the car that you're looking at right here, is meant to compete in the GT2 racing series against the Audi R8, KTM, Lamborghini Huracan, and Porsche GT2. They do offer the BT62, which effectively looks like this car minus a couple details, and that is available to be road legal. So this is like, think about this as the racing Corvette that competes in Le Mans, but you can buy a Corvette for the road, right? This is a similar scenario. I'm just showing you guys the racing car because that's what came out yesterday. And as a reminder, this is a 600 horsepower naturally aspirated V8. And Michael, typical for GT racing in terms of the breadth of noises, I totally agree. But GT2 specifically, these cars are going to sound mental. We're talking about inline 5 turbos. We're talking about naturally aspirated V8s. And we're talking about flat sixes. Usually in GT racing, especially in GT3, we're just getting V8s with some turbos, which, by the way, sound mental, right? You get flat plane crank V8s in the Corvettes, and you get regular ones in like the Huracan, stuff like that. But in this racing, we're getting some different stuff. You know what I mean? Michael says, actually, cars being less powerful than road legal cars. Yeah, that is the evolution of GT racing overall. Is these race cars actually do have less horsepower than their road cars by a lot, right? If we look at things like the Ferrari 488, if we look at things like even the Lamborghini Huracan, the McLaren 765 LT, these are all cars that have more horsepower. Shout out to Jack Thomas with the like. Welcome, my man. Thank you for tuning in. We're looking at cars that have more horsepower than their track variants. And that plays into the MoneyShift narrative of modern cars are just being too quick, too fast, right? There's no reason why a McLaren 765 LT should have more horsepower and greater acceleration, greater overall levels of performance than the GT3 car for which it is based. There's no reason. The dynamic that we used to have 10, 20 years ago, okay? Brandon Connolly hosting the stream. Thank you, my dude. I appreciate you. Thank you for that. There's no reason, all right? There's no reason why I appreciated the dynamic we used to have. I'm talking like C5 Corvette era, right? Where those cars were quick, right? The C5 Corvette was fast. The C5 Z06 was fast. The Aston Martins were fast. But the GT cars were leagues above, right? In every aspect, speed, cornering capability, aerodynamic efficiency, etc., etc. Now, the road cars accelerate faster. Now, they're overall not faster on track because of the aerodynamics of the GT cars, but it doesn't make sense that there's a chance that a road car has 200 more horsepower than a street car. Now, the Brabham is a unique case, right? Because this car was designed from the jump to be a track-only car. So when you're building a track-only car with no rules, it makes sense that it has a lot of power and low weight. Right? It makes sense that the car that then competes in the race series is constricted on power and has to add more weight because the car that it's based on was designed to be the ultimate track car. But when we're looking at something like a McLaren 720S GT3 car versus a McLaren 765 LT, it makes no sense why the 765 LT has enough power to blow the tires off in third and fourth gear versus the GT car. Makes no sense to me personally, right? Jack says, confuses all the clout chasers who are like, why wouldn't they just run road cars on track then as if power is everything? Totally, right? There most certainly are people that see the 765 LT McLaren specifically, right? I'm honing in on McLaren here, but there's other cars, right? Like the Ferrari SF90 that makes 1,000 horsepower, et cetera, that see those and are like, ugh, wouldn't it be cheaper and more cost effective if they just leveraged that vehicle? And like, you guys are just dumb, right? There's more to a race car than just power. There's more to cars than just acceleration, right? There's reliability, there's aerodynamics, et cetera, et cetera. Also, that Brabham is gorgeous. Totally agree. This is one of the better looking cars in the segment. All right, let's get some tunes going, as we so often do. I like the little like elevator music vibes we have. You know what I mean? I don't know if you guys do, but to me, it just brings me an overall greater level of peace. Yeah, there we go. All right, cool. Moving on to the next subject for today. Guys, you may be familiar with the Wilderness line that Subaru has unveiled for the Outback, and they've recently teased that Wilderness badge, that Wilderness line is going to be extended to another vehicle. Now, these are the two photos that Subaru released, and you can see in the front there, the first car in the Wilderness series, that is the Subaru Outback, but the second car is this guy right here, and we know what it is. We're not dumb here on MoneyShift. We know what this car is. It's so clear. What we're looking at in this photo is obviously a Wilderness package on the Subaru Forester. Now, for those of you that don't know or aren't privy to what the Wilderness package is on the Outback, it is wider. We're talking about fender flares, new bumpers. We're talking about more ingress and egress capability. We're talking about skid plates for more protection. We're talking about different grills, copper accents, raised suspension, Star Trek's water repellent seats. This is a vehicle that can go off-road and do it well and enjoy doing it. Now, in the Forester, it's going to be a little sad. And the reason why I say it's going to be a little sad is because what's going to be powering the Forester, right? Because when we look at the Outback, okay, the Outback at the very least has an engine in it that gives it some juice, gives it some gusto, okay? In the Wilderness package on the Outback, you're looking at a 260 horsepower direct injected FA24 engine, which is out of the Subaru Ascent, which is available in other Outback models. It's a turbo 2.4 liter, okay? Good engine. Can make good power. Problem with the Outback, though, is it has a CVT transmission. That's just a Subaru problem. Honestly, they haven't woken up yet and replaced that with a nice auto, and because of that, I'm going to be honest with you guys, that's the only reason why that car isn't in my driveway. I adore the Outback Wilderness with every bone in my body. I think it looks beautiful. I think its capabilities are impressive. I love the look, everything. But that CVT transmission alone is why I don't own one. Jack says, I really want them to make a Wilderness WRX. I'd buy that in a second. Yeah, that's a natural line progression for this, right? But when we go over to the Forester, okay, when we look at the engines available for the Subaru Forester to sort of try to approximate and understand what potentially could power a Wilderness version of the Subaru Forester, that's where things get a little sad. Because even though in old times, okay, the Subaru Forester had some spicy models. It had some interesting, more powerful sort of options. That's not the case anymore. The only engine available in the Subaru Forester is a very weak one. Very, very weak one. So weak, in fact, that they don't even mention it on the Subaru website. If you go to the Subaru website and build a Forester, there is no mention of the engine size and the horsepower, where usually that is a staple. You got to dig deep. You got to go into the features, into the specifications, into the just verbose like language in order to get any understanding as to what this car is powered by. And that's because it's a small engine. Powering the Subaru Forester is a 2.5 liter naturally aspirated 4-cylinder engine. That engine makes 182 horsepower and 76 pound-feet of torque. Now, Jack makes a good point. In the BRZ, that would have been enough. That's a small car that weighs under 3,000 pounds. But in the Forester, made it to a CVT and an all-wheel drive, sure, it gets 33 miles to the gallon. which thanks to a large gas tank allows it to get over 500 miles of range per full tank. But 182 horsepower isn't what you want when you want speed. Okay, 182 horsepower isn't what you want when you want some sort of performance, some zest. And that's where the Outback beats it, right? Because the Outback has 260, which isn't earth-shattering, but that additional 80 horsepower makes all the difference when you're just driving the car day to day, when you're accelerating on the highway, when you're doing minor tasks. 260 is more than enough and would have been a welcome addition to the Forester lineup, and it's an engine that's available in the Subaru Ascent. So for them not to make it available in the Forester in some sort of XT trim is interesting, especially when the last generation Forester still had the turbo option. But on this car, standard across the range is a 2.5 liter naturally aspirated boxer 4-cylinder engine. So while the Subaru Forester Wilderness is going to look the part, while the Subaru Forester Wilderness is going to have the capabilities that a car that wants to go off-road should have, it won't have an engine, it won't have a transmission that excites. So temper expectations, because unless Subaru does something crazy, unless Subaru does something wild and puts a bigger engine in the Forester, we're just going to be getting something that looks the part but doesn't have the gusto behind it. Jack says, what's your opinion on cross-shopping between the Outback and the Turbo Cx-5? Those are great options, and both of them should be cross-shopped because, let's be honest, I wouldn't be surprised if the Outback actually had more interior space than the Mazda. Now, the biggest differences between the Outback and the Mazda are going to be the overall feel of the vehicle. Mazda is trying to push up market. They're trying to push luxury, and because of that, the CX-5 is going to feel a lot more premium than the Outback. That turbo engine in the CX-5 makes 300 plus pound-feet of torque, okay? Not that it's going to feel like a performance vehicle, but torque in these luxury cars is thrust. Right? When you're driving something like an S-Class, like a Phaeton, like a 5 Series, like a 7 Series, whatever it is, when you accelerate, even if it's quickly, you don't feel rushed in your seat. You feel like a progressive boost that just builds on forever. And that's what the CX-5 Turbo feels like. If you're looking for something that's premium, if you're looking for something day-to-day, the CX-5 Turbo, even the CX-3 Turbo, or CX-30, excuse me, are great values for the money. But if you want something with a little bit of off-road chops, then the Outback's the way to go. You know what I'm saying? I had a 21 Turbo 3 hatchback. 320 pound-feet of torque was awesome in a little hatch. Yes, exactly. So you know that motor very, very well. The Mazda 3 Turbo hatch is an incredible machine. So I think that's your decision, right? And I will say this. If you haven't driven an Outback, drive it and drive it on the highway. See if that CVT is for you, because it's not for a lot of people. I had it in my Chevrolet Volt, and I didn't mind it because I knew the vehicle that I was getting into, right? I knew I was getting into something that was just for day-to-day driving, that wasn't for anything crazy. But I won't lie when I say that that steady state RPM at full throttle or at half throttle, whatever, it ate away at me for sure. And that would eat away at me in a car like the Outback Wilderness because it has that, right? And I'm not saying it won't for you, but for me, it did, and that's the difference between the Mazda and the Subaru here for me, outside of luxury versus wilderness outdoorsiness, right? But the Outback's a great machine, there's no doubt. I mean, they sell oodles of them for a reason, right? But let's move on to the next vehicle, which isn't a car. In fact, it's a motorcycle. Jack says, I haven't test driven the Outback yet, but my fiance is in the market for a new car, and we're thinking of those two. Now, that's the under $40,000 price bracket. So the CX-5 is probably one of the better SUVs there. Best. I guess the one car that I would add there, and this is going to make a lot of people's eyes roll, and I don't really care much, is add the Hyundai Tucson to that list, man. You might be genuinely surprised. The Hyundai Tucson comes in at like You could get them for under 30. You can get a well-equipped one for around the same range, and it would be worth to add. And then the last vehicle that I'm going to add to your list of cars that you guys got to drive is a brand new Nissan Pathfinder. I'm talking about a 2022. It's got the 3.5-liter V6. It gets 27 miles per gallon on the highway, which is probably similar to that turbo Cx-5, but the difference between the Pathfinder of old and the new one is it has a 9-speed automatic, so it ditches the CVT, and it has boxy, rugged looks that are reminiscent of the old Pathfinder, so it makes for an overall really good package, and it's new for 2022, so they're not going to be everywhere yet, right? So I would add those two to the list. I'm probably more keen on the Pathfinder than all of them. I love the Cx-5 Turbo, don't get me wrong, but I think what Nissan's doing with the Pathfinder is a good one. Jack says, we wanted to go with the new Rogue, but our local Nissan dealership was trying to screw us. Yeah, F the Rogue. It also has a CVT. It's also bone slow. I'd go Pathfinder over Rogue all day long. But yeah, I can see that, especially now when you're buying a new vehicle. Things are tough. Things are tough for sure. All right, but looking at this thing right here, this is the new Aprilia Tourx 660, and you guys are probably saying, Thanasi, isn't the Tourx a Volkswagen? Well, hey, Aprilia did it first, and they spelled it correctly. This bike is spelled Tuareg, Tourx, which is how that car should be spelled as well from Volkswagen, but they obviously couldn't price it the same. Now, the interesting thing about this Tourx is it's a 660cc bike in this class, and this class has, for a long time now, pretty much been 1000cc plus, but now more and more companies are starting to make vehicles in this class, in this 660, 600cc space. And the reason for that is the performance they're able to extract out of this 600cc class engine is very similar to the performance of old in the 1000 plus cc. This engine is a 660cc parallel twin, and it gets 80 horsepower and 52 pound-feet of torque, which is very similar to what 1000cc plus engines of old were doing. But because it is a 600cc engine, it weighs 412 pounds overall, which makes this thing very nimble. Now, in addition to that, there's adjustable front and rear suspension, but with a saddle height of right around 34 inches, this is not for the short people. I'm sorry, guys. I'm just going to say it. This isn't. If you're small, you're going to be leaning this bike. You're going to be on the balls of your feet. There's just no way about it. It doesn't have some features like the GS and the Harley Pan America have, where the Harley, if you actually go up to a light, will lower. Like it'll lower itself so that you're more comfortable at a stop versus something like this. In addition to that, this bike also has ABS brakes, which riders can actually turn off. If you're driving this thing and you're off-road and you don't want ABS, you can select it on or off for both tires or just the rear, which is really cool. This thing has 4 ride modes. This thing has traction control, cruise control, and a 5-gallon gas tank, which will give you plenty of range. And it has really good looks. I think this thing is gorgeous. Jack says, love Aprilia, 80 horse must be wild, totally, especially in a bike that weighs only 400 pounds. This thing must be a ton of fun, and with 21-inch tires in the front, looks pretty good too. Overall, big fan of this. No pricing was announced. I'll definitely get to it if it is, but overall, cool machine, and I'm a big fan of that class overall. Now, the next vehicle comes by way of the fine folks over at Car Scoops. They spied a Yaris GR that looked a little bit spicier. Now, I know this is a vehicle we don't get in the United States here, but it's so impressive that if they create any other variants, it's fun to know about, okay? Now, the Yaris GR itself, for those of you that don't know, is a car that was a homologated version, okay, of... Wait a second. Hold on a minute here. Sorry, I searched Yaris GR quickly into Google, and I got the Toyota USA website. And on the Toyota USA website, under upcoming vehicles, is GR Hot Hatch. And I thought they were talking about the Yaris in the US, but that's not the case. Obviously, we know that the Yaris GR is not coming to the States. But anyway, it gets a 10 out of 10 rating by most that have interviewed it. What you guys are looking at in its base form is a car that is a homologated version of a rally car. Okay, while it looks like a Yaris, it actually has a lot different than a Yaris. Okay, this car is shorter than a regular Yaris. This car has a different rear end than a regular Yaris. This car has a carbon fiber roof. This car has aluminum hood and tailgate, which save oodles of weight. The front half, again, is Yaris, but the rear is Corolla in terms of chassis. There's 4,200 weld points, which is almost 300 more than a conventional Yaris. In other words, this thing is totally different than the Yaris for which we know and love. The Yaris for which is just a basic economy car. This thing is wild. It's got a four-wheel drive system that's claimed to be the lightest four-wheel drive system on the market that has the ability to do 60-40, 30-70, or 50-50. This is a 3-cylinder turbo engine that can do 0 to 60 in 5.5 seconds. And it's superb. But it gets spicier. This car clearly has a lot of differences over the Yaris GR that we already know. There's a lot of different aerodynamic changes. You can see it in the front with the canards. You can see it in the rear with the bigger wing. You can see it in the front with additional fender vents. Right? This thing is way more serious than a car that's already serious. What we're looking at is probably going to be the GT3 RS of hot hatches. And I live for it. Now, for those of you in the States, don't worry. While we don't get the Yaris GR and its brilliance, what we are going to be getting is a Corolla GR that'll have a similar power plant. And we know the rear end out of this car is from the Corolla, so the front end is going to be out of the Corolla as well. So it'll definitely be a fun car to drive. Now, Jack asks, no way this is coming out as a production model, right? And Jack, there's two scenarios under where this car comes out, okay? Number one, this is just a car used for racing, okay? This is something that's used in either a spec Yaris series. This is something that competes in GT4. This is something that competes in some whatever, right? It's just a race car. Now, what leads me to believe that's not the case and that this actually is going to be a production car in some form, whether it's them testing for the Corolla or whether it's actually a hot rod version of the Yaris GR, is the fact that if you look at the interior of this thing, there's no roll cage. If you look at the interior of this thing, the seats are the conventional Yaris GR seats. The steering wheel is conventional Yaris GR. Everything that you see on the inside of this car points to the fact that it's a road-going variant. Now, if this is testing for the Corolla GR that we're going to be getting here in the States, or if this is actually a Yaris GR like GT3 RS model, we don't know. That I don't know. That I can't tell you. Do I want it to be a hot rod version of the Yaris GR? I do. But is it realistic to say that this could just be a test bed for the Corolla? Yeah, 100%. 100%. So I'm more inclined to think that it is a production model of some degree. Whether it's a test mule or not, we don't know, right? The reason why those front vents could be different, maybe it's to make it even wider, to make room for a Corolla front end so it isn't shown. Shout out to Iman. Welcome. Hope you're doing well. Thank you for the like. Appreciate that. Right? Like there's plenty of possibilities, but I do think this is more production than it is just straight up testing for the sake of testing. Right, which is exciting, which is very, very exciting. I just went to grab coffee and we don't have any. But guys, this is why we haven't made any mistakes today. This is a large cold brew. We're cruising. There's no stuttering. There's no stammering. It's because we're in business. We got all the caffeine in our systems. We're cruising. We're riding high. All right, guys, we got a couple more pieces of news for you today. First comes by way again of Toyota. Now, as usual, guys, I know what you're thinking. I know what you're saying. Thanasi, this is a Toyota Land Cruiser. But it's not just any Land Cruiser, it's an old Land Cruiser, so what the hell are you showing it to me for? And you're right, this is an 70 series Land Cruiser, which started production, guys, in 1984. Now, you don't have to worry because I did the math for you. That's 37 years ago. This FJ70 was in production, and it's still on sale today in various markets. Now, the difference between what it looked like then and now, there's definitely some changes, but they're subtle. They're subtle. Now, for the 70th anniversary of the Land Cruiser overall, Australia gets a special edition of the 70 series, and this is it. So this is an Australia-only thing, and you can see the changes they made to it to modernize it, okay? It got new headlights, it got new taillights. The interior leverages a new digital display, like the center stack, right? It's like a Pioneer radio. Alpine radio, right? It's nothing crazy, but it's a double dip, right? And Australia gets to benefit from a special edition of this to commemorate the 70th edition. That Heritage Edition gets this grille that has the OG Toyota badge. It gets darker headlamp bezels. It gets 16-inch wheels. It gets fender extensions in black. You see it right here. It gets black upholstery inside. It gets wood grain. This is a 2022 model, Jack. Yes. Almost like a resto mod from factory. Totally true. Totally true. So what you guys are looking at, okay, these photos here are the the Land Cruiser that you can buy today in Australia. That one photo with the beige one with the blacked out headlights, that's the special edition one I'm talking about. Now, the changes to the interior and exterior aren't big. Like I said, it's changes to the headlights, changes to the grille, the fender extensions here that you can see in gray on the special edition, the anniversary edition, are black. Inside, it has wood grain upholstery instead of just this straight up leather. Now, it is going to be available in single or double cab pickup or wagon, which is the conventional SUV that we know and love with the Land Cruiser. It's also going to be available in 3 colors. You can get French vanilla, which is white. You can get red, or you can get taupe, which, by the way, is my favorite color. Shout out to Aaron Culinero. What's going on, my dude? Hope you're doing well. Welcome, welcome. Doesn't have automatic AC. Doesn't have dual zone climate. Screw off. Figure it out yourself. But you can see the little display up there, okay, to bring this thing into the 21st century. Now, powering every single FJ70 Series Land Cruiser Special Edition is going to be a motor for which I adore. It is a 4.5-liter V8, but it just isn't any V8. The V8 that's powering this thing is a turbo diesel, and it's been in production for the better part of 40 years. What is going on, Aaron? How you doing, dude? So the FJ70 is going to be the FJ70 70th edition. The 70th anniversary, if you will. They're all going to be powered by a 4.5-liter turbo diesel V8. You can see it right here. This is the 70th. Black bumpers, black fenders, black wheels, blacked out headlights, Toyota grille. And that's the difference, right? Love the pickup, by the way. Love the crew cab pickup. Think it's sick. Think it's the balls. The other interesting thing to note, all of them, all the special editions, manual. Manual for all. So you get a 4.5-liter turbo diesel V8 and you get a manual. Sick. Now in Australia, these things don't come cheap. Cars are definitely more expensive in Australia overall, thanks to the fact that for the better part of, you know, the majority of their automotive segment, they have to import all of them, right? So there's those taxes that come with it. The cheapest Land Cruiser starts at $58,000 when you convert it to US money. But to put that in perspective, okay, the MSRP for a Mazda Cx-5, okay, a Cx-5 that we talked about already, we talked about this earlier in the show, that can also get up to $55,000 fully loaded. So a fully loaded Mazda Cx-5, so a Grand Reserve Touring, whatever the hell they call the top one, I don't remember, it's something like that, I think it's Reserve. That costs the same as this. And I'm going to tell you guys, I know, Jack, we talked about the Cx-5 and I love it. I love the turbo engine, love the interior. But if I had to pick one today, I'm going with a 4.5-liter turbo diesel V8 manual Land Cruiser, because I think this thing is just the beans. Badass indeed. This thing is super cool. And if you don't get it in this sandy taupe color, you're an idiot. I'm just kidding. All right, now the last vehicle we're going to talk today isn't just one vehicle, but it is a series of vehicles. Jack, so I had no idea you could possibly make it that much money. You said, I wanted to compare the price in Australia. So you can't make it that much money here. In fact, if we go to Mazda USA right now, I think the most expensive you can get a CX-5 is like $40K. Let's see quickly. Yeah, they start at 25 and they go all the way to 37. Yeah, for the signature. That's what they call the top one. But I just wanted to show you in Australia, the prices for vehicles are elevated. So that $37,000 Mazda Cx-5 in the States is $55,000 in Australia. Okay, you got it. And that's the price of this Land Cruiser, right? So maybe if it was in the States, we'd be seeing it roughly $40K. You know what I mean? Base price, which I'm in. I'm into it. I am into it indeed. Now, the last vehicle or vehicles that we're going to be talking about today comes by way of Fiat Chrysler, specifically Jeep, but we're going to touch on Dodge and Chrysler in a second as well. Jeep announced that the first all-electric Jeep will be coming in the first half of 2023, so we are just 2 short years away from the first all-electric Jeep. Now, they didn't mention which model, if that was going to be a Wagoneer, if that was going to be a Grand Cherokee, if that was going to be a Patriot, a Compass, a Renegade, whatever. But if I had to put my mark on it, I think it's going to be this guy. And maybe not this one specifically, okay? What you guys are looking at here is the Jeep Wrangler Magneto. This Jeep is a Wrangler that was unveiled at Moab this year for Jeep, and it is cool as all hell. This thing, again, all electric. It is 285 horsepower, 260 pound-feet of torque, but that electric engine is connected to a 6-speed manual in the Magneto with a conventional pedal-operated clutch. And apparently the drivetrain responds very similarly to the V6, for which the Wranglers are known for. Jeep says the Magneto concept could do 0 to 60 in 6.8 seconds, which is like a half second faster than a conventional Wrangler, not a V8. The difference between the Magneto and what we're probably going to see, this thing had 4 electric motors. This thing is a manual. We're probably not going to see that. But I do think that the first electric vehicle for Jeep should be a Wrangler. I do think that. It's got the most brand cachet. It's the one where the people would probably respond to it the best. Jeep expects 70% of its sales to be electrified by 2025. Now, this is all news hot off an investor call from Fiat Chrysler, overall Stellantis, if you will, now. Dodge is also expected to launch a plug-in in 2022. We don't know what that'll be. Shout out to Antoni. What is going on, my dude? Hope you're doing well. Kalispera, Kalnikta, whatever it is. Yasura Antoni. Chrysler is also going to be making a really big change. This is a quote from the fine folks over there. They say, quote, "We're now preparing for the rebound of this brand," talking specifically about Chrysler. "We'll tell you more before the end of the year. So that presume we're going to know more about Chrysler before the end of the year. But the plans are moving quite nicely to a very exciting proposal that is going to be based on a fresh product, fresh technology, and most probably an innovative distribution model." So what this tells me about Chrysler is a couple things. One, they're probably going to be full electric or close to it, right? Fresh product, fresh technology probably points to the fact that they're going to either all be plug-in or all be electric. Number two, when they say most probably an innovative distribution model, we're talking about direct-to-consumer, guys. Maybe this means you order it on an app. Maybe this means you order it online. Maybe this means whatever. But innovative distribution model almost certainly points to something similar to what Tesla's doing today. Jack says, "Have you watched the teaser Dodge launched about the new EV using the classic logo. I can't wait. Yeah, that thing was dynamite. Saying that they had to switch to EV because they had to or whatever. It was super cool. We'll play that to end the stream. But I do love the quote that we will tell you more before the end of the year, but we're moving towards a very exciting proposal that's going to be based on a fresh product. So that means that it's not going to be repurposed stuff. It might use elements of other vehicles, but it's going to be all Chrysler, which is going to be great. Fresh technology, love to hear that. And most probably an innovative distribution model. That just means to me Tesla stuff. So we'll see what happens in the mode of Chrysler, but I'm excited nonetheless. Now, the last thing that I wanted to talk through and get your guys' opinion on is a Craigslist haul. So you guys know I'm in the market for a track car, okay? And I recently sold the Civic. It just wasn't it. I didn't have any attachment to it. I don't know. It was fast. It was sick. I enjoyed it. I had a K-swap 97 Civic Coupe. But I sold it, got good money for it, and potentially looking at some other things. So I want to get your guys' opinions on some of these cars. First of which is this 1984 Porsche 944. Was used as a daily driver for the original owners. Love to hear that. It has 100,000 miles, which is a little high, but I don't really care because it's a car from 1984, right? Runs and drives great. He says, I've had it for 3 years, stored in the winter, and drive it on weekends for 3 seasons. You love to hear that as well. I have all the maintenance records. You love to hear that as well. All original car. You love to hear that as well. Driver's seat stitching beginning to come apart. New rugs, new Bluetooth stereo. Love to hear that as well. So, is this thing perfect? No. Does it look pretty damn good? Yes, it does. I don't know why these pictures are this orientation, though. These last 2 photos should be, like, flipped like this. But yeah, that's number 1 on the option list. Number 2, 2004 Mazda Rx-8. This guy also has around 100,000 miles, but around a 20-year age difference. This looks to be in pretty good shape, both inside and out. Granted, it is a way newer vehicle, so it makes sense. Love the Rx-8. It's one of the better chassis. Always wanted to own a rotary. This is a really cheap entry point, even if it needs a whole freaking new motor. This is a really cheap entry point, $4,700. It is at a dealership in Rochester, New Hampshire, so that's a little far away from me, but I could visit some friends while I'm up there. Option number 3, most expensive. This is a BMW 325 IS, so this isn't even an M3, okay? But it has the BMW Factory M Technic package, which means it came from the factory with the M Aero kit, so the thing that makes it look like an M3. It has the sport exhaust from the factory. Most importantly, it has a limited slip differential from BMW. Most importantly. Second most important, it's got the Alcantara and M-Rain BMW interior. Look at this. This interior alone, I'll zoom in here because I know this is hard to see. This interior alone is on the money, and I know it's not perfect. You can see some like fuck ups here, if I will. But this is the cash and prizes. It's got the M Performance handles. It's got the M Technic wheels. It's got the body kit, right? And it's white. The only freaking problem is it has a sunroof. Car's been sitting for 4 years and has a power steering leak, few small dents and scratches here and there, and a small hole in the driver's seat bolster. He's got a replacement for the seat, which is good, and he found a supplier for the fabric. Great. I don't have time to get the car back on the road, and it's not registered and won't hold power steering fluid, so I can't allow test drives. So out of the 3, this is the most expensive, but it's the highest reward in terms of the spec that this car is pretty impressive. So this is the cheapest, the RX-8. This is the middle ground, the 944. Zoom in here too. And then this is, yeah, like I said, this is the cheapest. And then this is probably the highest risk, highest reward. Jack says you have to own a rotary at some point. They're awesome. I agree. And dude, I just feel the RX-8 gets no love, man. And it is one of the better chassis out there that you can buy. The engine's so goddamn low, it's considered mid-engine and far back. Like, yes, it doesn't have the power, but who cares, dude? I don't care about power at all. Jack says E30s are skyrocketing. You might be able to make money when you sell it. Yeah, totally. And it's a good package as well. This is an E36, but it has the factory M Technics package, the M Aero kit, sport exhaust from the factory, limited slip diff from the factory, BMW M Motorsports door handles, and the M Marine interior. Like, this is the one. And he swapped the engine out with an M52, and it has an S52 head. So it's not slow, right? It's not slow. And even if it was, who cares? But it's a good spec. So I don't know, guys. We'll see. I mean, this one is the cheapest by far, and I think I could get it for even cheaper. If you can get this thing in the threes, you're talking about a car that with suspension, wheel, and tire is all said and done for $5,000. And that includes the things you would need to make this bulletproof. We're talking about new plugs. We're talking about new radiator, excuse me. $5,000 you could probably have. $5,500, you're talking about all said and done. You have a good track machine that you could drive on the weekends. This is just rad. Father used to own a 944 back in the day. There's the attachment there, but overall, big fan of that thing. But before we close out, let's take a look at that Dodge EV sort of trailer that they played. They called it the Summit. And pause the music here. Where's the music coming from? There it is. $5,000 for a track car sounds like a no-brainer to me. I agree with you, Jack, and I'm going to be honest with you. The options are as follows. Okay, currently where my head is at, in terms of it's like a track car and a weekend machine, right? So if I was looking at just track car, Spec Miata is the best call, right? It's not even close. You can get one for like $7,000. It's got a roll cage. It's got everything. But I want something that I could also drive on the weekends, do little road trips with, stuff like that. So that's the difference, right? I'm not looking for something that's like stripped out, caged out, etc. So that's where a car like an RX-8 and a 944 kind of makes sense. All right, let's watch this video that Jack called out. It's called Performance Made Us Do It by Dodge, and it is previewing their upcoming all-electric vehicle.
Hold on a minute.
I'm going to pause this, or we'll watch it all the way through, first shot, and then we'll go back and watch it.
Did we hear that right? Dodge is making an electric car?
We're talking hypothetical, right?
Surely you jest. Dodge? You mean the people who devised the legendary 426 Hemi and sunk it into a sublime missile? You mean the Dodge that created the Hellcat Red Eye and the most powerful muscle car in the world?
This is so good.
840 horsepower wheel-standing demon? Why on God's green earth would Dodge ever build an electric car? Anybody? Any thoughts out there? Hello?
All right, let's give that a rewatch. First off, Jack, you're spot on. This logo is sick. Call out to OG Dodge logo. Love it. Looks awesome. I think this is so funny.
Hypothetical, right?
Surely you jest.
Now, obviously, this is CNG, right? Obviously, this is fake. Obviously, this is like not real. Mark with the, I bet it's going to be sick. I totally agree. Hell yeah. Fuck yeah. Indeed. This thing is going to be awesome.
Dodge.
I love, by the way, that throughout this whole video, they're like, Dodge has always made fire-breathing crazy shit. Why the hell are we going to make an electric vehicle?
You mean the people who devised
I
the
love
legendary
this.
426 Hemi and sunk it into a sublime missile?
I love that.
You mean the Dodge that created the Hellcat Red Eye? And the
Like,
most powerful
they're
muscle
giving you a
car in the
history
world?
assessment, and in the same time, they're like, why would we do this? We're the people that make crazy-ass V8 wild shit. We made a car that did frickin' wheel stands.
Why on God's
Like, why would they do this? Like, brilliant from a marketing perspective. Brilliant. This is brilliant too, where they're like, why? We have no idea.
Hello.
This guy's brilliant. Four-wheel burnouts. You see this? I'm going to tell you guys what this means, okay? Obviously, it means it's going to be all-wheel drive, duh. But I bet you that it's a 4 electric motor thing. I bet you that it's a 4 electric motor thing. Because, by the way, the fastest electric cars we've seen, I'm talking about the Rimacs, I'm talking about the Neos, I'm talking about all of that. They leverage electric motors in each of the wheels. It's not a dual motor type deal like the Tesla is. And when I'm talking about performance, I'm not just talking about straight line, right? Because obviously the dual motor Plaid does 0 to 60 sub 2 seconds, right? So there's a world where Dodge is just like, we're going to make a dual motor thing, and it's going to be a drag racing insanity machine. But if they're going for more than that, they could do the 4 individual motors, which they've shown before in that Jeep Magneto we talked about earlier, right? They've shown they do that. So it'll be interesting. Mark says, so there are no leaked pictures? None yet, dude. None yet. I'll do some big searching tonight, and if I find anything, I'll show it tomorrow. Jack says, I love the subtle way they show it'll be all-wheel drive with the burnout. Then he says, there's no leaked pictures because I assume nothing exists yet. I agree. And if it does, I bet you they're using something else to test it, right? It would make no sense for Dodge at this moment in time to showcase what this thing could look like when they could get all their driveline and drivetrain testing by showcasing it in a Wrangler or showcasing it in a Grand Cherokee. You know what I mean? Like their test mules showcasing this drivetrain doesn't have to use this body. And that's the beauty of electric cars, right? Electric cars are so modular that you can put a different body on it. Like the Tesla that I have right now, it's a battery with 2 motors, right? That's it. You can remove the body and put something else on. Obviously, there's more work to it than that. But I mean, it's a lot easier to test different bodies on similar drivetrains for an electric car than it is for something like a gas car, right? Like gone are the days where you have these extensive mules that leverage different body parts or crazy shit, right? Because you don't have to do that. You can just plop a Wrangler body on top of this crazy drivetrain and you're doing all the testing and no one has any freaking idea. But yeah, the four-wheel burnout is sick, and it had to be all-wheel drive, right? If they're pursuing crazy performance. Love it, love it. Well done, Dodge. Fair play to you guys. And that is the car news that we have today. So let's do our world-famous summary, and then we will get you guys going on your merry way on this fine Tuesday. The first vehicle that we talked about today is the Brabham BT63. Now, this is the BT62, but changed up minor for GT2 racing. This car will compete against Audi, KTM, Lamborghini, and Porsche, and it leverages more aerodynamics, including a fin on the back and a larger diffuser. Now, the biggest differences between the race car and the street car are it has 100 horsepower less and weighs 350 pounds more. Now, this car will debut in the final round of the 21 series at Paul Ricard, and it will cost $400,000. The next vehicle that we talked about is Subaru teasing a new vehicle coming in their Wilderness brand. Now, Wilderness means wider, new bumper, skid plate, different grille, copper accents, raised suspension, water repellent seats, and it is likely going to be debuting in the Forester, where it'll have a 2.5-liter naturally aspirated engine making 182 horsepower and 176 pound-feet of torque, mated to a CVT. So don't expect any performance brilliance coming out of the Forester Wilderness. The next vehicle that we talked about is the Alpine. I almost said Alpine. The Aprilia Tourx 660. This is the newest dual sport from the fine folks in Italy. It has a 660cc parallel twin engine that makes 80 horsepower and 52 pound-feet of torque. This thing has the ability to turn on or off its ABS on both wheels or just the rear, traction control, cruise control, 5-gallon gas tank, 4 ride modes, and it promises to be a ton of fun. But with a 34-inch saddle height, you're looking at something that's probably going to be uncomfortable for the shorter riders. Sorry about that, guys. Next vehicle that we talked about is the Yaris GR. Car Scoops has spied for the second time a hot rod version of the Yaris GR. This thing has extra aero with canards, additional venting, and a big rear wing. It'll likely have more aggressive suspension, more chassis tuning. Consider this the GT3 RS of hot hatches or a test bed for the Corolla GR. That remains to be seen. Moving on, we had more news from the fine folks of Toyota. The Land Cruiser has been on sale for 70 years, so what better way to celebrate it than creating a special edition version of a Land Cruiser that is nearly 40 years old? Australia are the lucky folks that get the 70th anniversary edition of the 70 series Land Cruiser. Now, what makes it special? Different grille, darker headlamps, 16-inch wheels, fender extensions that are black upholstery, wood grain, and you can get it in single or double cab pickup or wagon like is pictured here. All of these are powered by a 4.5-liter turbo diesel V8 with a manual transmission. You can see it right there. That is what they will look like. And that is awesome. Jack Thomas coming in hot with the 2 hundo stars. Says, love the streams. Always excited to watch and see new things in the automotive world. Keep up the good work. Dude, you have no idea how much that means to me. I truly appreciate you for that. Thank you for tuning in and being an integral part of this community, Jack. Thank you so much for that. Appreciate you. Truly. The last bit of news that we got to talk about before my voice actually feels like it's giving out, like actively giving out. I don't know why that is. Maybe it's because I talk so much. The last bit of news comes by way of Jeep, Dodge, and Chrysler. Jeep is going to be announcing their first electric vehicle in the first half of 2023, and they expect 70% of their sales to be electrified, which means either electric, hybrid, or plug-in by 2025. Dodge also will be launching a plug-in in 2022, and Chrysler is preparing for a full rebound of their brand by creating something that is fresh, something that has the newest technology, and with an innovative distribution model, which just means direct to consumer. Now that you have all the news you need, I hope everyone has a fantastic Tuesday, and I will see you guys tomorrow morning at around 8:30 a.m. Eastern Standard Time. If you guys enjoy the Money Shift podcast, don't forget to hit that follow button, that subscribe button, so you guys are up to date in all the latest car news. We just surpassed 1,600 followers on Facebook. Thank you guys so much for that. The quest for 2,000 begins now, and I appreciate everybody for tuning in today. Jack, Mark, Brandon, Patricia, everybody, Michael, thank you so much. Matt, tuning in right at the end. Thank you, everybody, for tuning in today. I will see you all tomorrow. I am Thanasi on behalf of Money Shift.